Thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar on Lighting for Churches live in video. My name is Laura Lawrence. I'm the Global Marketing Director at Harmon. A few things before we get started. Everyone on the call is muted to keep the noise levels down. However, there is a chat function where you can submit your questions to the presenters and they'll try to answer as many questions as possible. This webinar is also being recorded and the link will be available later this week. We do have a number of other webinars taking place over the next few months for audio, lighting, video, and control. And we'd like to encourage everyone to take a look at the different webinars in our Learning Sessions workshop series that can be found on pro.harmon.com, as well as visiting Harmon Professional University to see our many on-demand and certification courses that are available to you for free. And now I would like to introduce you to my colleagues, Lucas Jameson and Chris Pyron. They're the presenters for today's webinar. Lucas and Chris are both business managers here at Harmon and both have a lengthy background in the house of worship industries. They work with clients to design systems that creatively meet all their needs in audio, lighting, media, training, and budget. And now I'll pass the mic over to you, Lucas.
Hey, well, welcome everyone. We're excited that you guys have decided to join on. We hope this time is very beneficial for you guys in light of what's going on. You know, a lot of people are taking advantage of these training courses. I think it's great that we stay active and keep trying to improve our skills in what we're doing and keep trying to learn new things, you know, nuggets, tidbits here and there, you know, just so that, you know, when we get back to it, we can come back in with new fire and approach lighting in a new way and hopefully be better for it. So, you know, we're going to get started here. You know, a little bit about me. I've grown up in the church world my whole life, and you know, I'm a pastor's kid, born and raised in a small church, about 200 attendees or so, and that's where I kind of got my start, my grasp on lighting. Like a lot of people, it's a very common story, at least getting started in church. And you know, from there, I was able to start my own lighting company, buy my own lighting fixtures and things like that. I mean, a small company, but humble beginnings for sure. And you know, ended up, you know, becoming a lighting designer, you know, self-proclaimed, but started, you know, making it a business and making it a career and doing church camps and things like that. And that got me noticed and, you know, ended up getting picked up by a Christian artist named Phil Wickham and got to be his lighting designer on the tour for a while and some other shows. And then I ended up working for a production company shortly thereafter that as in the house of worship called GPS. And there I started working with, you know, acts like Hillsong and Bethel and Jesus Culture and all these great acts. And I was their sales representative in the house of worship division of that company. And that kind of just got me, you know, all inundated with the house of worship production community as a whole. Shortly thereafter that, I ended up taking a position at a church in Southern California. For those of you that are tuning in from other countries, it's in the United States. And most people know California, but that's, you know, I was there for about 3.5 years as a production manager and lighting designer. It was a pretty large church, one of the largest churches in Southern California. And, you know, that's where I've learned a lot of what we're going to share today, a lot of mistakes that I've made. Even from, you know, when I grew up in my dad's church as a kid. And we'll share some of those tidbits. I got some examples to show you guys. But being in that environment, being in church and being in a broadcast environment as well, you know, we were on TV, they still are on TV and things like that. And so some things we'll show you are some examples of, you know, how to accomplish lighting in a live environment as well as a video environment. And the video environment can be for, you know, large applications like that, or even a smaller, you know, studio application. The principles apply across the board. And so we'll get started here. And first, before we get into that, just kind of wanted to give you guys a little bit of a fixture breakdown. You know, at Martin, we have a lot of tools that we have manufactured and created. So one of the first ones that we're going to talk about, and it's a primary fixture because it's one of the most iconic fixtures in the lighting world, ellipsoidal fixtures. Literally a go-to for everything, widely used across theaters, and it's just such a versatile fixture and that's why it has stuck around, and there's been very many iterations of it, and people have their own take on it. Now they have, we've got LED engines in them and full color mixing, so the days of gelling them, and we'll talk about gel just a little bit, color correcting them, some of those days are over when you start using some of these fixtures that have full color mixing in it. Martin, we've got the ELP warm white edition, which is like your standard 3200 Kelvin temperature. And then we have our color edition. They both come in black bodies and white bodies. So, we have those options available, and we'll talk a little bit about those. And then we've got our wash fixtures, the Aura XB and original Aura, very commonly known fixtures around the world, great wash fixture. Quantum wash is kind of the bigger brother to that, big punchy wash light, and we'll talk about how these are used a little bit in some of the photos that we get to. And then we have some of our smaller fixtures, Rush Par, MH6, basically the same fixture, just one's a moving head and one's a par fixture, and we got those in variable white and RGBW. We go to our profile fixtures, and we've got ranging from very small, profile fixtures from the Rush MH1, going all the way up to our new flagship, the Era 800, which is taking the place of the Viper in our line, and everything in between. And the profile fixtures are a mix of just regular original profile fixtures, but then we have what's called performance fixtures, and our performance fixtures have framing shutters in them, and we'll talk about those a little later on too, as we're talking about key lighting and why the framing shutters play a vital role in what we're trying to do. And then we have hybrid fixtures as well. Hybrids are, they're your spot and your wash combined, as well as a beam fixture. They're kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, so to speak. Some are better than others in the world. There's a lot of different options across the lighting community for hybrid fixtures, but we just have a few here to show you: MH7, the Axiom, and then our new Era 500 IP, big boy for outdoors. And then we have miscellaneous fixtures, is what I titled it. And those are just things like, the Atomic 3000, very common strobe light. It's been used for well over a decade. I mean, before I came up in the lighting industry, that's always been the staple. And then we came out with a new iteration of that a few years back, called the Atomic 3000 LED, which has an aura effect behind it, RGB aura effect, so you can change the color of the face while still having that real bright, punchy white strobe. We have a Rush blinder, typical take on the Molfe, just in an LED format. And then we have Septron. LED video strips are so popular today in what we're doing in lighting design. And there's a lot of different options out there. Some people are using LED tape. Septron is just a very rigid way, tour-ready way to do this without it being disposable, so to speak. And so a lot of stages are using that. And then I think that's it. So we'll get started here. And I got Chris Pyron on with me. Our Instagram handles are down there, so you guys can feel free to follow us on Instagram. Again, I know Laura already mentioned it before we started, but if you guys have any questions throughout this talk, please type them in and send in your questions. We're going to do a Q&A at the end. Whatever comes to mind as we're talking, and we'll filter through those and try to address as many of those questions as possible. But we want to make sure that what we're doing today is going to give you guys tools for what you guys are doing. And so we'll get into it. And Chris, are you there? Let's see. Is Chris muted? Are you muted, Chris? Hold on one second, guys. I think we're having a technical difficulty. Well, I know that Chris has control of the presentation. So hang on just for a second.
It wouldn't be a teleconference without one technical difficulty.
That's right.
Thanks for being patient, everyone. Hey, Lucas, while he fixes that, do you want to tell us a little bit more about your house of worship experience and one of the jobs you've worked on recently, maybe?
Yeah, well, it has been a good bit since working for Harmon, since I've been on a actual job site or show or anything like that. Nowadays with my role, I'm supporting a lot of these guys and what they're doing. You know, and that's the cool part about what I get to do now, to go around and meet with a lot of churches and a lot of light designers and technical directors and production managers, and really see what they're doing and how they're approaching, you know, church and worship services, and, you know, presenting the messages that we are trying to present to the people. And it's very cool to be able to go into different places and see how people are doing it differently, and technology that people are using, especially with, you know, broadcasting today and live streaming and all that. And, you know, some churches are just, I mean, I can't even imagine, you know, their reach and what they're doing and how they're doing it. It's just incredible, you know. So yeah, I mean, I wish I was back in the saddle a little bit more and doing some lighting. I still do lighting design at a church called Free Chapel. The big main location is in Gainesville, Georgia, but they have a location out here in California in Orange County. And so I still get to do that every now and then, and go in there and do lighting design for them. So that's always fun to get back behind the console again and do that. But yeah, I mean, lighting is something that I'm very passionate about, because it just invokes so much emotion, and, you know, you really set the tone for a service, for a worship moment, for a song. You know, everything that we do is so visual that it creates the atmosphere. And we can help tell the story of whether what the song is trying to say, or what the performance element is, if we're doing some type of illustration, you know, whether dance or special song number or whatever have you, or even the message, you know, setting the color tones and the feel of the message to help it get across along with what the pastor is saying or whatever. You know, we have a vital role. I don't want us to ever underplay, you know, our roles in helping tell the story. You know, we're just as important as, you know, the audio engineer or the video director capturing it. You know, we provide the lighting for them to be able to capture that. And so I think that you know, we should always take a step back and realize that what we do matters, and look at, you know, what we do as an art form, as a craft, that, you know, we are just as vital in presenting the gospel and presenting you know, the message or whatever it is that we are trying to tell, that our pastors are saying every week, or our worship teams are singing songs about. So I think Chris is back.
Yeah, let me get one audio system undone here, and we'll redo the other one. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Welcome, Chris Pyron, to the conversation.
I'm so incredibly sorry for that. It worked flawlessly. We were testing it earlier, didn't it?
It sure did.
All right.
That's church, right?
We're going to do this. We're going to go back to that's church world, right? You got to figure out how to pivot on the fly. Always have a backup plan in place. So now that everybody can hear me, let's get back into this, guys. So Lucas, you know me. I'm kind of an audio guy. For those of you who may or may not have joined me last week, and we did the miking techniques class here online. And being an audio guy by trade, you know, obviously I feel like I've got that nailed. I spent 10 years as a tech director for a church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I kind of had to start getting into video and lighting and some of these other disciplines as well. Lucas, I want to kind of revisit some of that and revisit lighting at my church. So, like, where do we even begin? Where do we start? Do I look to a console first? Do I look at, hey, I need to buy the MA whatever that everybody else has? Do I look for those cool beamy light effects things like we're looking at in this picture here, or do I need an LED wall? Where do I need to begin with all of this?
Yeah, everyone needs an LED wall. It's the most vital thing that you need for presenting the gospel today. No, the first thing that I do when I go into any scenario, whether I'm talking to small churches, large churches, performance spaces, it doesn't matter. The most important thing is, how am I lighting the talent on stage? Because people are there to see the talent that's on stage, whether they're in a theater, a concert venue, or in our situation that we're talking about today, churches. You know, nothing else matters when it comes to visuals if I can't see the people who are talking or the people who are singing, the people who are presenting whatever message it is that they are presenting. So the first thing I always go to is key light. It's the most important. It's 75% of everything because your subject just matters. You know, before we actually get into this part, I do want to say that lighting is subjective. And yes, there's two parts to that. It's subjective in the sense that, you know, there's different ways that people have their mark in their lighting design. You know, I differ from, you know, somebody like a Daniel Cannell, for instance, you know, one of my mentors and good friends. And he's incredible. And we definitely have different approaches to design and how, you know, we do different things. So lighting is subjective in that way. However, it's also subjective in the way that you are subject to your space, you're subject to your finances and your tools. So just because, you know, we're going to talk about a few ways to do it, you may not have all the tools, you may not have all the finances and resources to do everything that you're going to see today. However, what you do have, you can definitely use and apply some of these practices. I won't call them principles or standards because there are just different ways to go about this all around. But everyone has some type of tools at their disposal, whether it's a par can, you know, $30 par can, or whether it's, you know, a $10,000 moving light. Principles are, the standards, and I don't want to say standards, I keep saying standards, but you know, the approaches that we use can be done with both, either or. So let's go into this first slide, Chris, if we can display that.
Okay. So I see somebody lit up here. So obviously we've done a lot of that front key light thing you're talking about, right? So walk me through how did you get there, or how did this look get created?
Yeah, so this is a very, very simple look. Obviously, the first thing that we see is the subject is very lit. You can see the drum kit in the back, and it's not lit up that much. It's not actually capturing that much light, but the subject is bright. They are present. This isn't the sexiest image to look at as far as like a holistic image. It's not like, oh my gosh, that looks so amazing, but my subject is clearly visible, and that's 75% of the battle. I can see his emotions. I can see his, like, if he does a twinkle in his eye, if he smirks, I can see it as an audience member or as an online viewer. You know, right now we're doing a lot of churches are doing video online for the first time. This is the most important thing. Whatever background, doesn't matter. Can I see the person who I'm trying to connect with? And so the way that we approach this one is in this fashion here. It's called a 50% overlap. This is very common practice in creating a seamless transition when you're walking out of one light into another and walking across that stage and making sure that you don't fall into dark holes in the dark spots. Overlapping fixtures on top of each other is how you create that smooth transition when you're walking between fixtures. Let's show how the lights are positioned in this one, Chris. We see that these cones here represent where the light is coming from, and it's just straight on. There's nothing real fancy about it. They're evenly spaced, and you know, these fixtures that I'm using in this photo actually have a zoom to them, and so we can open up that zoom. And that edge is pretty soft. These are a par light that's being used, so the edges aren't a hard edge, which helps create a very smooth transition when walking between fixtures.
So no matter where he goes on that stage, left to right, he always has, it looks like, at least two pools of light that are bleeding together to keep him covered. So he's always going to be really even until he gets all the way out to the extreme edges, right?
Right, at least two, if not three. And in this frame, as soon as you start using a frost or using a soft edge, you probably will have three lights on you. Most of the time, if you walk on stage And any of these positions that these guys that I have here are standing on, you will have, if you look up, you will see that you have 3 lights in your face until you walk to the edges. Now the edges, aren't so important to a lot of people. Sometimes there's stuff on the edges that we don't want to see. There might be projector screens on the right side and the left side. And so one of the things that we can do, if we have the ability to, talk about tools, is we can control the light. Let's go to the slide that shows a few options. We talked about the ellipsoidals earlier and moving light. The Encore Performance has framing shutters within it, as well as the ERA 400, and the Rush Par does not. But on a Par, even, there's something called a barn door that I can slip in. And that barn door has louvers that we can control and shape that light, cutting that light off from where we don't want it to go. If we cut it in on the right and left sides, this image illustrates what we can do there and really control the area that we want to be lit. So, a lot of large stages have a lot of fixtures on them. And how do you keep all these fixtures from just bleeding all over the place and hitting your sets, hitting your screens? You use tools, we use ellipsoidals that have internal shutters. We use moving lights that have internal shutters. We use barn doors, and there's a few other options out there that you can use as well. So there's a lot of tools to do what we do and to help control that light.
Okay. So we need to take all the light and put it on the subject, but I've got a different picture here that looks pretty similar, but at the same time it looks way different. Why does this picture look better than the first one?
It's simple.
Why do we like this?
Yeah, it just has everything to do with the background. It has to do that there's no longer a black abyss. If you look at the subjects and comparing the photos next to each other, there's not much difference in the actual subject. I mean, the colors are a little bit different, but they're both very well lit, and they look almost exactly. You could look at the shadows under the nose and different things under the chin. They look almost identical in the way that they're lit because they are lit exactly the same way. But the difference is the background, and that's what helps kind of, at least in this online community and lighting for video that we're talking about, that helps audience engagement, being able to see where a person is and see the surroundings as opposed to just seeing this black abyss. It just helps pull me in as a viewer a little bit more. And I mean, I think everyone watching can see the difference and be like, yeah, definitely the image on the right is more attractive. But it's only because they were intentional about putting something behind the subject to break up the negative space. There's still a lot of negative space there. Like, there's not a lot actually going on. It's 4 lines of LED video strips, very commonly used today, like we talked about earlier. There's 2 fixtures that I can see in this photo, but it's so much more attractive just because they were intentional about making sure that, there's no haze. There might be a little bit of haze left over from the worship you can see in the top right corner, but that's it. It's just having something behind your subject to let people know where they are, or at least feel where they are.
Okay. So, because like if I was in the room, obviously I could look on stage and tell that, oh yeah, he's standing way in front of whatever the drums or whatever are up there behind him in the black. But cameras are kind of dumb and flat and 2-dimensional, right? So I think that's why I like the picture of Dave there on the right with the yellow stripes behind him, because it gives my brain something to look at to say, oh, that's where the upstage line is. Cool, I know he's standing down in front of that. So. Yeah,
we can kind of fill in the gaps in our brains, right? It's like I can imagine what the rest of the set looks like, even though I'm only seeing, this 16:9 image really cropped and really zoomed in. When we're sitting in the audience, we have a peripheral vision. Like we see the entire thing. If I'm sitting here right now and I'm looking straight in front of me, I can see the ceiling. Cameras can't do that. Someone talked about Daniel earlier. I was on the phone with him the other day, and he mentioned, we're talking about this whole video thing and what people are doing today. It's like if you take a tube of wrapping paper and you just look through your eye in your stage, and you look through that tube, that's about what the audience is going to see. And so
the video audience, the online audience.
That's what the online video audience is going to see, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, everything that we do around that can look amazing, but if I zoom in and look through this tube and what's captured there, I don't have all this grandeur around me like you see in this photo here. You know, I zoom in on that keyboard player, and all I see is those white dots around his on that last image. Sorry. All I see is those white dots on that video wall behind him. Like I don't see all the other action going on above in the air. So yeah, it looks like a great photo, but if I zoom in on just that one individual, it's going to have a much different representation. So, you know, being intentional about that, as well as, you know, what's going on behind our subjects, helps create the environment that we're presenting. So yeah, I think that it's very important. As well as if we go back to those photos, backlighting. It's very subtle. It's not something that is in both of these photos. It's not something that's going to jump out at you right away, but it is there. You can look on the shoulders. You can look in the hairline. You see there's a cooler color temperature that's being cast on both of these subjects, and that helps just separate them from the background a little bit. It helps you, like you said, create that 3D space in a 2D plane, and lets me know that there is depth, there is distance between them and what's behind them. It just brings it out so it just doesn't look so flat, and that's it's not essential, it is not paramount, it is not the most important thing that you do, but it does add, it does help. You know, again, key light, you know, making sure your subject is lit. All these other things that we talked about behind it are bonuses, they're adds, and you can make your whole image look better by adding these few other things. But starting with the first thing, with key light, it makes everything.
Cool. So I've got my stage, I've got my front of house truss, pipe, unistrut, whatever my front of house position is. It's in a straight flat line, and I've got all my fixtures just gunning straight on the stage, and that's going to give me amazing front key light all the time, right?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Okay.
Yeah.
Give me a sometimes scenario. Like there's this church with this guy.
Yeah. This church.
He looks pretty good here. I like this. This looks good.
Yeah, this was my church. It looks great, straight on. It looks like he's well lit. He's got shoulder light. You can see it all along his arms and his sleeve. It's, like I said, it's very subtle, but it's there. You know, his hair is lit from the back. There's another view of it. He's definitely punchy. He stands out from the background. He's not dull. He's not too dim. Might be a little too dim for my liking in this particular broadcast shot, but that might just be an iris on the camera. Yeah. However, if we go and we look at this camera angle here, we're going to look at this photo next. These little gray circles here are where the cameras are positioned. We were just looking at these two right here in the center, and we're going to look at this photo here to the left that has this line kind of drawing right to where Pastor is on stage. And let's go ahead and look at that angle.
Side of his face looks funny.
It does. If we go back to the illustration there, we can see why. The way that I was key lighting this stage was just very straight on. I do have wide angles on my fixtures. They're all the way zoomed out. I'm cutting in the edges on the right and the left to control the spill. I've cut the top off so it's not spilling on all the set design, all the LED wall and pipes and fixtures and things like that. But if there's no light coming from where this camera is actually looking. And furthermore, there's 450 some odd seats on that side as well that have this same or worse view, because they're even going more drastic to the left of him. And so they're seeing a lot of this shadow, which makes a really dramatic look and can be great for a time of worship or something like that. But when I'm trying to connect with the speaker, a lot of times I'm just looking from my position at the lighting console, from the center of the room, from those middle 1,000 seats. And it's going to look great for all those people looking straight on. But these sides over here, and obviously the camera picked it up, you know, they're having a totally different experience. You know, sure, we've got IMAG, you know, screens on both right side and left sides of the stage, but even IMAG is showing that image. And so it just makes it a little hard to see all the detail in someone's face and their emotion and what they're trying to express, because I'm not filling in those shadows. And that's where we come to talk about something called fill light. You know, the way I'm key lighting is one way because there's, like I said, budget. We don't have all the tools in place. This is another way. This is typically called a two-point key, where you've got lighting fixtures coming in from the right and coming in from the left. You know, kind of a minimum about a 25-degree angle off center, so 50 degrees. Some people do more of a 60 degrees. Some people go, 90 degrees, 45 and 45 off center. Get really wide and come in and cross over and really hit all those shadows. So when I turn my face to the right or to the left, I still have light coming straight at me so that I'm not going to be so dramatically lit like the photo that we just saw, if that makes sense. And so
absolutely,
in this photo here, if we do this on the center, and then we add in our right and our left sides, we're creating zones again, just like on our first image. But in this example, our fixtures are spread farther out to the sides of the stage. They're not straight on directly in front of the subjects. So I need more space in my rig or my light pipe in front of house to be able to come in from the edges, from the outsides, to come in and really fill in that area. Or if I can't do it in front of house, maybe I go on stage a little bit and as far down stage edge as I can to come in from the side and fill in those gaps and help eliminate those shadows, so I can have a more clear representation of my speaker and see all of his emotions and face.
Okay. Okay. So you said like going out, split in center by 22 to 25 degrees, 45, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 even in some cases. You can go crazy wide.
Yeah.
How does that help smooth things out here?
Well, if we look at this photo, this is definitely lit the way that we just showed in the diagram. 2-point key coming in, and I think there's like 16 fixtures actually in the audience, and they're all doing this X pattern, so to speak, across the stage, creating this very smooth area of light. And you can already see there's way less shadows. I mean, he's got wrinkles in his face, but they're kind of filled in. I'm not seeing that wrinkle cast, backwards, because they're filling in all those gaps, and it's creating a much more pleasant viewing experience, at least from an online, from a camera angle, because I'm getting so close, or even iMag. I can see so much detail in that I want to be able to fill that in so I can see as much of his face as possible, and it not be so dramatic and so like strenuous on the eyes to really like pay attention. It's just easy for me to see all of his facial expressions.
So every spot on the stage, I need to put a zone that has two lights coming into it, and then let that overlap with the next zone all the way across.
Correct. And when you turn them all on,
he's got a smooth field.
Yeah, when you turn them all on together, it's going to create a smooth field. Alternatively, if you turn any of them off and you just have one zone lit, now you have a zone, and you don't have light going everywhere else. So you also have some isolation. So if you still want to be dramatic with it as well, you don't have to light your entire stage. If your speaker just stands at the pulpit, you can just have that one zone lit.
Okay. Okay. So since we're talking about video specifically, probably one of the most famous video pastors out there in the world today is this guy, right?
Yes, Mr. Smiley.
Mr. Joel Osteen with a huge smile. I know you've been talking with his lighting designer a little bit. Talk to me about how they light him, specifically for TV, because I know they do the same thing, right? However they light him in the room is how it's also lit for broadcast.
Yep.
So what's the technique that they're using here for him? Because he always looks amazing on camera.
Yeah, I was literally at Lakewood a month ago before this whole coronavirus thing hit, and literally blew my mind. Like, I almost had a nervous breakdown when Josh when I saw what Josh did, and he was working with another lighting designer as well that came up with the solution of what they're doing. Joel doesn't move away from his podium. When he goes into preaching mode and he walks up there on stage, he is with an arm's reach of that podium at all times. I mean, he is very systematic in his approach. He knows where his cameras are. He's very detailed. I mean, this guy has so many viewers that watch him around the world. He knows how to connect with his online audience in a room that's 20,000 people. But I would expect in a room that seats 20,000 people to have a ton of front light on this man. And when I found out that there's only 3 fixtures lighting this photo right here, this online broadcast, there's 3 fixtures, it literally blew my mind. And so
3 lights. Okay.
3 lights, yeah. So let's go ahead and talk about it and see how they approach this with 3 lights. A key light, a single key straight on. This is the most pivotal part of how they're doing this. This is 90% of it, I think. We could call it 80% because there are 2 other fixtures in the mix. But this is the primary fixture. And let's go to the next photo. You can see it very clearly. You can see the cast of the fixture on the back wall there.
Right.
It is 1 fixture lighting him from the front. And
1 light straight on. Okay.
Yeah, and it blew my mind because how do you do that without getting so many shadows and seeing, you know, when he turns his face right to left, you know, you don't see the bridge of his nose casting shadows on his cheeks or his eye, anything like that. Well, here comes the other 2 fixtures that we talked about, these 3 fixtures. They're coming in from far right and left. I think Josh told me it's about 45 degrees off center. So we're talking about 90 degrees.
Oh.
I mean, it's really wide. And the best part is they're par cans. I asked him if I could share that, and he said I could. He's got a Viper, a Martin Viper from front light, and he's got 2 par cans coming in from the side. Again, you know, this is a way to do it, and people that know what they're doing can use tools like par cans to be very, very useful and impactful. And you would never know. You would think that this television broadcast, that there's a $50,000 worth of light on Joel right now just for his front light.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
there's not,
I would have thought the same thing because that venue's huge. You know?
Oh, it's massive. So. It's really crazy, and they're not even at full. These side fill lights, they're about 50%. So he's literally using them just to fill in the shadows on the side of his face, and it kind of broke me. I mean, because yeah, I've used these disciplines in different lighting designs and different churches and things like that. But when you're talking that just a simple thing of just casting in a par can, getting, you know, and a lot of par cans, people don't know, it's a parabolic reflector, and the way you can turn the parabolic lens reflector in the back of the can changes the cone shape of the light. Just by doing that and getting the light just right, you're able to create one of the most beautiful broadcast lighting that you see on TV. I mean, it's almost flawless. It's insane.
That's great. So there's been a bunch of different approaches that you've talked about, right? There's the straight-on key. There's the just even wash. There's the 2-point key in zones. There's this thing that the guys at Lakewood are doing with 1 Viper out front and a couple of fill lights coming in really wide. So kind of what I'm seeing here is there's really not a right or a wrong way to do lighting, but there's definitely like good results, better results, and then great results, right? There's definitely different ways to skin the same cat, I guess. So
yeah, there definitely are, and you know, all these approaches we looked at. We've looked at moving light fixtures that have framing shutters in them. We looked at par fixtures or wash fixtures that just have a zoom on them, and we looked at a combination thereof for Joel. I mean, it's the tools that you have, you can use. What you have in your closet, you know, in your church, in the back corner that, you know, it's got dust on it, and you think, I'm never going to use that, you know, 10-year-old or fixture, whatever it is, you might want to. And you would be surprised just by trying a few things. I mean, trial and error. You know, the cool thing about church, I've always told people, is church is the best place to learn anything ever, because every week you get to try it again. Every single week. You
get to hit the reset button. That's right.
Yeah,
that's
I mean, you can't do that on a tour, or you can't do that in a theater for a show or for a play. I mean, we get the opportunity to really look at what we're doing, evaluate what we're doing, and see if I do X, Y, and Z, what will happen. You know, because a lot of us don't have Vectorworks or things like that we can put all of our figures into and look at angles and look at mathematics and really see how this show is going to look or how this lighting design is going to look. Sometimes it's just like, man, it's just trial and error. I got to get a ladder out, I got to climb up, I got to put a pipe up, I got to do whatever to hang a fixture, and see if this is going to work. And we
so play around with it,
see
if you get a cool result out of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even with your video, I mean, when you're talking about creating an environment for video, you know, again, the background, it doesn't have to be symmetrical. You're talking about a square this big out of the whole thing. I mean, your light just needs to, or your light or your elements there just need to look interesting. It doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, if you're filming your pastor and you're trying to find a space that's more interesting than just on your stage, because we're going to online and not everyone's just to fake it, like pastors on stage preaching to an audience of 0 people. You know, there's things you can do. You can have them sit in the front row, put a light, like, you know, on a road case or on some type of stand. It doesn't have to be a professional lighting stand, like just something, and look through the lens of the camera. Like, get from behind your lighting console what you see as a lighting designer from a lighting console. Look through the lens of the camera. Like, that's what's in this online, we're talking about lighting for video. That's what's important. What does the viewer see? Not what do I see and how does it look in the audience. I'm not going to have extension cords running every which way. No one's going to see that on camera. They're just going to see what the end result looks like, and we can play with that. We can, you know, cast light wherever we want, put light up on walls, put, you know, wood pallets up, stack whatever we want to do. If it looks good, it looks interesting, and it fills in that void, then we've done our job. You know, if it's not distracting, it's enhancing. It's then we've done our job. But we get to hit, like you said, hit that reset button, and we can try something every single week. And I think that's the best part about working in the church world. You know, you can make mistakes and learn from them. You know, it's okay to make mistakes as long as you learn from them.
Okay, that's cool. You said something during that caught my attention. You mentioned background, right? And we kind of talked about it a little bit early on when we were looking at that picture between was it Larry and Dave, you know, with the black background and then the yellow stripes.
Right.
But so talk to me a little bit more about background, because obviously that's going to be an important thing for video, right? So let's go back to Abundant, back to your old church that we were talking about earlier, where you had your front wash coming in. Talk to me about how you lit background and how did you get depth on that stage?
Yeah, so sometimes it's with actual physical fixtures. In this case, and what I did here, I used the air to my advantage and a haze machine. It doesn't always have to be physical fixtures. So if we look at that angle, again, we're looking at this camera angle. This is the view that we're going to look at. That looks a lot different than what we saw earlier, right? This is what that shot would have looked like, minus the color shadow cast on him from the fixtures in the room, if we didn't have what I put in there, because literally there's nothing behind him. I mean, there's a couple of things that would get lit up by key light, but it would just be white. Go ahead and go to the next photo. And voila, introduce a field of color. And the only thing that's doing that
coming from
is the light fixtures with haze in the room. That's literally just coloring the air because of using a hazer. Not every church can do this. Some pastors do not like having hazers on while they're preaching. And then we go into that picture earlier where we were looking at with Dave that had the LED strips on it. You know, that photo didn't have any haze in it. So having an actual fixture in your backdrop is what helped create that that look, that, you know, that sense of that there's more there. With this image, it's literally, I was just using haze to my advantage to create this this backdrop, so to speak, for a pastor, and he's still got his backlight on him and everything like that. Key light looks great, aside from what we talked about earlier, not having a fill light. But the image, the overall image looks pretty, you know, quote unquote, you know, we talked about making it, your image look sexy. This, you know, makes it look more visually stunning.
Sure.
And so that's one way that we were able to do that. We have another example here And, you know, we looked at this photo earlier, and that's a giant LED wall behind him. But what if he didn't have that LED wall behind him? What would he look like? Hey-o!
It looks like the picture we saw earlier. It's that huge black, it looks like this.
It totally does. Like, the only thing different is he's got a TV screen in his shot, you know.
All right.
And no drum set. But, you know, when we introduce that background back in, you know, it changes everything. Like, he didn't change at all.
Right.
How bright he was didn't change. The color of his face, you know, the color that he was lit with, didn't change. It was literally what was behind him. And that kind of just proves the point that kind of helps create the atmosphere, create the set, the scene. Makes my eyes not so just fixated and focused on him. It becomes a little bit more of a peripheral viewing at that point than just me being stuck to his head as his head floats across this black abyss, you know, so to speak.
Or it's not the only thing for you to be looking at there. So it definitely sounds like there's like this layered approach. We have to start with the killer key light. Let's make sure they're lit properly from the front. Let's hit them with a little bit of backlight, you know, to kind of get that halo effect, stand off the backdrop a little bit. And then your scenic elements, whether it is a video wall, palettes, truss, LED strips, you know, whatever.
Yeah, festoons or lighting strings.
So sort of a tiered approach, right? Okay. So can we pop through some pictures and talk about some designs that I've got here, and let's talk through some of these. Like this one, I know you're really familiar with this design because this was one of yours.
I am.
But I see a lot going on here, right? There's key light because I can see the individuals. I see that there's like halo, like that sheen on the top of their heads. So you're hitting them with some backlight. I think those little big magenta ones up in the air, they're coming down and doing some backlight on them. But you're also filling in a lot of otherwise black space because there's not a video wall up here or anything, but there's a lot of purple, a lot of magenta in the room. And then you're breaking it up with some beams. So there's a lot of texture going on to cover up all that black. Yeah,
there is. You know, one of the things that I love to create negative space. And I love using, and what I mean by negative space is I don't need this entire image to be completely evenly washed with purple. I like having a variation between, I like being able to see dark and light spots. Sometimes voids are very necessary. Too big of a void, and we get what we saw in our very first image, you know, just black abyss. I don't necessarily want to see a black abyss unless I'm intentionally creating it for a moment. And sometimes it's very needed. I just need to create a moment and have that black abyss. But in this scenario, I mean, we have a few different things going on. The wash, the purple, is my essential, you know, before the lights with the gobos and the beams come out, the wash is the staple of this look. There is a video wall. It's an abstract video wall. There's pillars. You can barely see it. There's some white dots floating. The cross is actually on a square video wall. But that was kind of the design. I think the cross was up before everything else, and the purple. It was just the purple lights and the white cross in the middle. And that was how it looked. And then I used all the profiles just to come in and enhance and create this big moment. They're not moving in this photo. The gobos aren't rotating. They're just static in there. And, you know, they came on. They actually came on in this photo in a staggered way. So they didn't all just appear at one time. It's kind of like they faded on in bits and pieces. And then the orange glow that you see, we talked about the rush blinder earlier. This is an original Molfe, you know, 650 watt bulbs, old school halogens. They're a 2-light fixture, and they just add a glow. They add a texture, and that's actually what's providing some of that sheen behind the vocalist. Is you get some of that orange texture coming in and just helping them pop a little bit. It's also just filling the air. I mean, as an audience member, you know, that I'm sitting there and the whole room just begins to glow because you're just facing straight out towards the audience, and it just warms up the whole room. So I get from this moment of this cold light, this purple. Purple's a cold element. And then I introduce this warm color, and it kind of just lifts your spirit a little bit. It's like something just happened, and it goes along with the music and the elements. It's just, it lifts the moment. So this was a really, really cool moment for me. I forget what song it actually was, but I remember the feeling. I remember the emotion when it happened.
That's super cool. I'm gonna jump up to another one. You talked about warm and cold colors. Let's talk about this one. Here's a great example of warm and cold. This is a really cool look. Really simple though when you start breaking down the individual elements that are being used here.
Yeah, Rudy.
What's going on here?
Rudy has a definite. Rudy loves saturation and contrast, and he's really good at it. Rudy's one of my best friends, and this is his church at Father's House in Vacaville. When we talked about Dave earlier, that was his pastor with the yellow strips. Clearly, those strips aren't on in this photo. He's just using lighting fixtures. He's got profiles, and he's got top wash coming down. And it's so cool because that's a lot of people would have backwash coming in, and it would come from the back, and you would really see it coming out and really flooding the air with color. He has that ability. Those fixtures just aren't on. There's a quote, and I'm going to use it right here, that says there's 99 other percentages between 0 and 100. Use them. And that's by Tony Franson, fairly amazing lighting designer.
So just because I have a fixture that could rock 20,000 lumens doesn't mean I have to run it at full tilt all the time.
Absolutely. What you don't see in this photo is there's easily another 40, 50 moving lights in this rig. And that's the beauty. They're not even turned on. That's the beauty of this photo. I mean, it's got this down light coming in, casting this color just over the top of you. You see it on the shoulders, you see it on the stage floor, but then you have this really vibrant orange coming through and breaking through the back. It's got a little bit of side light coming from the floor as well, just helping to fill in. This is another way that you can create emotion and invoke emotion is side fill doesn't just have to be white. He's using side fill from the ground to cast on these people's faces. So you can still see the individuals, you can see the band members, you can see the worship leaders. The only two worship leaders that are lit are in the very center. You've got another acoustic guitarist, you've got two more singers outside of them that are in the dark, but yet they're cast with light. You can clearly see them. They're just not the focal point. And so this is a really, really great shot, I think, of creating a moment, creating an element, and using warm and cold to just really create this, if everything's just cold, you just feel one emotion, but this is like, I can't imagine what song is happening in the room right now, but it's visually stunning because there's such a stark contrast between colors, and I love it. It's something that I don't really do myself, but Rudy does it, and he does it really well. You can go through his Instagram page and look, and his contrast and color combinations are very vibrant and very, very fun to look at. Okay, so let's flip. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit, and we're gonna go to a total polar opposite of somebody who uses a lot of shades of white. Yeah.
This is a really cool look here. I only count a dozen fixtures or so. That's it. Yeah. But there's LED walls in here too, obviously being used as scenic elements. So talk through this a little bit. Yeah. Daniel is, in my opinion, one of the best lighting designers in the church world. I mean, he's a good friend of both of ours, but he's just killer. The way that the video wall, I wish I was there in person for this. This was a Seeds conference, I believe, 2017. And the way that the video wall is being used in this specific look is the video wall is actually the backlighting. Like I don't see a single wash fixture on. I see all of the cast of purple and blue and these cyans, magentas being lit on the band. That was the lighting element. He used the video wall to be a lighting element. It was also an image. There was something going on with it, but it was creating the light that was lighting the stage from the back. And then when you go into this big moment, and you've got these beautiful stark white lights coming through, and it looks incredible. Like, it's so visually stunning. It just draws you, and it just feels so uplifting. And as I dissect this, as I'm looking down, like I can see faces though, so obviously the key light's rocking and right where it's supposed to be as well. For all that white light that's coming off the back of the stage, we're still seeing faces. And absolutely. We're not losing that connection with the worship leaders and the team there. So. Not at all. Not at all. Yeah, you're still very much engaged with everyone on the stage. That's super cool. That's super cool. Awesome. Awesome. Well, I know I've learned something. Let's see what we have in the Q&A. Let's see what's popped through in the chat. Absolutely. I'd love to answer some questions. actually, I'm gonna go ahead and just escape out of this real quick so I can take a
Hey
look at
guys,
that, and we'll scroll through.
hey Chris, in case you're not able to see everything that popped up, I do have one for you here.
Okay.
Question is, what is the most significant change in lighting in recent years?
Oh, man, the most significant change in lighting has definitely been LED. Getting away from incandescent as the main source for our fixtures, incandescent and other types of bulbs, lamps, bulbs as well. Lamp-based fixtures are becoming a thing of the past, and even recently, even with Martin, we just released a whole new line of profile fixtures, big profile fixtures with a lot of output that are all LED. Before that, Viper was our flagship, and it was a 1,000-watt, lamp-based fixture. Now, when it was 26,000 lumens, when the lamp was fresh and everything was optimized, and now our brightest fixture is 34,000 lumens, and it's all LED driven. LED has become so efficient. We're able to put so many more fixtures into a rig, and especially in places and churches that have limited power. LED is so beneficial because I can put a lot more LED fixtures in a space than I can lamp-based fixtures. That was a great question.
Perfect. I have a few more if you guys are open to it.
Yeah.
How do you start a lighting design from scratch?
Well, first and foremost, key light. I think we kind of hammered that one home. Key light is essential. Second is, for me, and this isn't rule of thumb, but for me, I want to make sure I have a good backwash. Before I can even get, moving, profiles with gobos and creating these cool beams coming through the air, I want to make sure that my band is backlit. I want to see whether it's color or white. It helps just pop them out from the stage. We talked about that in the video. Backlight would be second for me. And then anything extra beyond that, we're talking about having visual elements, just having pixels in the view, whether it's LED strips, or, I had that photo that had the orange, the two light blinders, the mole phase, those being on, in different sets, head height, shoulder height around the stage, just adds an element. So that could be anything, really. It could be a cheap little $50, $100, $200 LED par, at 10%, just creating a pixel that breaks up that black space. So once you get your key light and your backlight, then just start having fun with it and look at angles. I've watched for years. I've watched, because I'm very much a worship lighting designer. I titled myself that. I've watched tons of DVDs from Hillsong, Bethel, Elevation over the years, and I've watched guys like Ian from Hillsong from when I was really young, and how he lit all these different environments. And again, you're looking through the lens of the camera, but they go to those wide shots and you see what the room looks like, and you see what's going on. And you get 3 seconds here, 5 seconds here to be able to see the whole picture. And so I drew a lot of inspiration in how I light and how I backlight a stage and whatnot from just looking at other people that I won't say that they're I'd say other people that have arrived, so to speak. I mean, clearly they're revered by many people. It's not just one person's opinion, and it's a world over. I mean, Daniel Cannell is another huge one that, I'd look at Seeds Conference for years, and a lot of things that I do are because of watching that and watching what Daniel did at Church on the Move and his different set designs that he did, and inspiration. Nothing is new under the sun. Everyone draws ideas from somewhere, from something. There might be a new iteration or a new implementation, but nothing is new under the sun. Everyone draws ideas from everyone, and that's how we keep coming up with new designs, because they're all just reiterations. There's just different ways of doing it, and someone did it first, and someone's going to do it again and change it up a little bit. Don't be afraid to be quote unquote a copycat, especially in the church world. Everyone's always concerned with, I don't want to look like, I just stole it from Bethel, or I just stole it from Elevation, or I just stole it from Transformation Church, or whoever it is. It's, does it look good on your stage? I mean, does your audience know that you took it from someone else? If that just helps make you a better light designer by using, designs that other people have done, you will eventually put your own stamp on that. You will eventually put your own flair and flavor and change it to where this looks like Lucas. It doesn't look like Daniel. Like this looks like Rudy. It doesn't look like Lucas. It looks like, you know, whoever. Like there's nothing that is, I would say, protected that you can't steal or that you can't use in your design. We got any more?
I do. Next question is, what angle is the light that comes down on the presenter on stage, and which key light can be used?
Yeah, so again, rule of thumb or whatever, it kind of goes out the window because every church has different scenarios, every venue has different. I've never been in a church that has like the perfect like front light position, lighting pipe position that's like at the perfect angle, because you get people that are all different heights on stage as well, but generally like around 45 degrees straight out in front of you. 45 degrees up is your angle that you want to be at there, and you can give and take that. I mean, some places I've been in is at 30 degrees, very flat, which actually works out really great. If you have really deep stages, you can afford to go down a little bit lower, and when you come down lower, you get less of raccooning around the eyes. So you get some of those flat light angles, and it really helps smooth out the face a little bit. Some you go steeper, and you start getting, you know, raccooning because you get shadow of the brim underneath the eyes. But I've never been in a scenario where I have the perfect location. Everything's a compromise. Like everything is, you know, try it, see if it works. Not happy with it, change it, try it again. But you know, you try to start that 45-degree angle and see, well, should I go steeper or should I not? I mean, one of the things that I did when I was at Abundant was I had someone go up on a scissor lift with a light and literally move the scissor lift up and down before I had chain motors and stuff like that. And see what it looked like, and someone was filming my face, and then we decide, you know, well, that looks the best. That's the best compromise. It's not perfect. It's not the way I want it, but out of all the options, this is the best option. So I can, you know, and I think a lot of people go into a room and they look at someone's thing and they say, man, that doesn't look as good as someone else. But you have to realize that might be absolutely best for that space, for that room, because that's the only thing that they can achieve. They may have tried everything else and they just can't achieve it because they have really short ceilings or X, Y, and Z. They don't have the ability to hang fixtures where they want to because they don't have the weight capacity. So a lot of trial and error, but if you can try to get, you know, around that 45-degree angle plus or minus 10 degrees, you might find your spot that you find really happy for your stage. They can't tell you exactly what angle that is.
Okay, next question. How do you combat with flicker while recording a session? Have LED fixtures been easier or more complicated in this aspect?
Can you repeat that one more time, the beginning of that?
Sure. How do you combat with flicker while recording a session? Have LED fixtures been easier or more complicated in this aspect?
Definitely complicates things. When you start, LED is a digital thing now. So we're talking like frequency and hertz and refresh rates. Even fluorescents. I mean, fluorescents have their own, you know, flicker refresh rate that you can see easily in some cameras. If you don't have your shutter set right and things like that, you're going to introduce that. And fixtures are not, LED fixtures are not the same across the board. You can't say because I have an LED fixture that doesn't produce any flicker over here, that's going to produce flicker over here. And it may not be the actual fixture that's flickering, they're operating at different frequencies. And so when you have a camera on them, you might have to go between different settings for some of these fixtures. Generally, there are fixtures that are called flicker-free, and they generally work regardless of what you're doing. But you know, that comes into a little bit of a broadcast territory as well, and that's where lighting designers got to work, and church technical directors and production managers need to work with your video guys, and you guys got to look at your cameras and see what your cameras are producing and see what your cameras can do. To choose fixtures, to decide what you're going to put on your stage, because if you're having that flicker and that rolling shutter, that's not going to be something that's pleasing to the eye on a stream when they just keep seeing this flickering going on. So you really got to work with your integrators as well, because if you work with integrators, they have had these experiences. They can definitely tell you from their experience of when they've installed X, Y, and Z fixtures, where they've had success and where they've had failure. And that doesn't even mean you have to use them to install the fixtures. You can just call some of these integrators up, especially these house of worship integrators. They are more than willing to just help you find a solution, especially out of the fixtures you already have. They are willing to be a resource for you if you just give them a call. You never know what you're going to find if you don't pick up the phone and make a call. So definitely reach out to some people and see what their success is, and see what, if you're looking at a certain fixture, someone who has it, ask their opinion before you buy it. See how it works with, their broadcast, see what broadcast cameras are using, and then have your video directors talk to each other. We're a worship community. Let's be a community and talk to each other and figure out, successes and failures so that we can help each other move forward.
Okay, we have a question here from a lighting designer who wants to know how to make their designs look more professional to help better market themselves.
Ooh. That's a tough one. I honestly don't know how to completely answer that. If I look at myself, there's some things that I've done that I've looked at and I've said, that I really wasn't happy with that, or that didn't look that great, or that effect that I was running looked pretty cheesy. I think everyone has a growing pains, in becoming professionals or masters of their crafts. At any rate, I mean, what makes a high school baseball player look like a professional baseball player compared to a pro? Years of practice, years of training. I think you just need to get behind the console, and like I said, you need to examine other designers and look at what other people are doing. Watch videos, watch execution, watch how people are making their transitions. Are your lights just going black and then going to something else, or do you have a staggered phasing that's making it look more interesting? Going black between every song is definitely not the solution. That's kind of boring. Having smooth transitions where, if it becomes expected at that point, you don't ever want to just have everything be expected. So I think that's one of the things. You just got to look at what other people are doing, try to emulate what you like and what you see, especially these professionals, and keep practicing. Practice makes not perfect, but practice makes excellence. There's a big difference between perfection and excellence. I can be excellent and not be perfect. And I think a lot of people definitely focus on being perfect, and you just got to realize, you don't have to be perfect, but just keep learning, keep pushing, keep reevaluating, like film what you're doing, film when you're doing a show, and go back and look at it. I mean, I've done that so many times, and I've gone back and looked at it, and I was like, man, that just looked terrible. Like, that was a bad decision. And then I don't make that choice again, or I made a good design, a good programming option, but I did it at the wrong moment. So then I look at where I can apply that decision to make it the right moment, and make it the right decision in a better moment. Not everything you do is bad, it's just at the wrong time. And so film yourself, evaluate yourself, just like professional sports players do. They look at game tape. Look at your game tape. See what you're doing. Be honest with yourself. I sucked. I got to change that. I think doing those few things are really going to help you step up your game.
So I think we have time for one more question. Lucas, you had mentioned getting behind the console and getting experience. This question is actually related to that. What lighting consoles do you tend to favor for house of worship applications? Any preference?
Sounds like this person has definitely seen some Churchtown Media Tech threads. That's
a loaded question.
It's so loaded. I can't answer that and say that there's one that is better than another. Martin no longer makes a console, so I feel like I can talk freely about different brands. you know, you have Grand MA out there. Obviously, everyone's like, oh, Grand MA is like the best thing ever. No, it's great. It's good. I can program on Grand MA. You know, some people are like, oh, Obsidian, you know, which used to be Martin. Obsidian control systems, like, you know, they're amazing, or Hog, or whatever. They're all great. You know, Vista. You know, I operate Vista as well. You know, I operate M6 or Martin M series, and a couple of others. And so there is not one console that is better than the others. It comes down to, you got to look at your budget, you got to look at your volunteers, or you got to look at your staff, who's running it. You have to go through this whole evaluation process and decide what's right for you. And there probably is not going to be just one that's right for you. You're going to probably have a few different options that you can choose from. And, you know, it's hard to say that every church needs to go this way or bust. It's definitely not that way. I mean, every console can be used very simplified. You know, people used to say, like, oh, Grand MA is way too complicated. Well, no, you can run a Grand MA very simply. And I did for a while, you know, and I still am to a certain extent running my show file very simply. It's not elaborate at all like some of these other big time programmers. So you can just do a lot with it, and I know that that's where the question is going. Everyone wants to know, like, how, you know, they just want to be, you know, their question be verified that, you know, Grand MA is the best. So yeah, there's definitely not a right or wrong choice, but there is a good or better option for your scenario, with your budget, with your resources, with your volunteers or staff, and you got to take all that into account and weigh the pros and cons. If you saw my Instagram handle there, if the person that asked that question has more specifics that you want to talk about with that, feel free to just DM me on Instagram. Anybody can DM me on Instagram, and, you know, if you want to talk more specifics about, you know, choosing a console, we can talk about specifics of why you want to go X, Y, and Z, and is that the right choice, and those types of things. So, yeah, sorry I didn't give you an answer, but it's more involved than just, hey, go this way.